they have listened to our request, and now they're happy. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
I mean, as long as you're on good terms with the cockroaches, Morgan.
Right. Maybe
speaking.
Good morning. An email was sent to my chambers at 5:52 p.m. yesterday by someone by the name of Chris Wilson, who I don't know whether it's the Chris Wilson who's on the witness list or not, complaining about the violation of my court order prohibiting the disclosure of the identity of jurors. Did not respond to the email, and I'll make the email part of the record in the case. If counsel can look at it if you like. Court reporter as a court's exhibit. It'll be court's exhibit number 2. No, I don't need it. You can keep it. Any comment by the state or the defense?
No, Your Honor, none from Mr. Murdaugh.
None from the state, Your Honor.
No. Anything before the jury comes?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
Your Honor, the video he's about to show has, I believe, and I believe he agrees, images which are under the order signed by you. And so as they're being proposed to be shown, if I have something or he has something, we're going to, obviously under that order, we have to disclose that to you. And if you approve the showing, we've got some logistical issues. If you give me just a minute. These monitors are, that one is not working, but this monitor is viewable from the audience, and we'd like to cover it up with some MacGyver-like device that's been developed by Mr. Waters, where you tape paper, we can flip back and forth. So if somebody has some tape, I'd like to do that before he begins so that nothing's shown back there if I can inadvertently. And you have paper too? I'm sorry. Is that a compliment?
may bring the jury. Good morning. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, for day number 4 of this session of court, day number 2 of this trial. As I instructed you prior to us commencing yesterday with the opening statements, you're not to listen, watch, or read any news accounts of this case or discuss it with anyone or allow anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. Has that occurred as to any jurors? All right, very good. It's very important that you keep that, follow that instruction. I know that many of you are not accustomed to sitting for long periods of time, and certainly not in settings like this. But if at any time you need a break, notify the bailiff, who will bring it to my attention, or raise your hand so that I could see, and we'll take a break at any time any juror would need a break, or any court participant for that matter. And we're ready to proceed by the state.
Yes, we are, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, the state would call Sergeant Daniel Green.
Raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly swear or
Affirm that the testimony you give to the court in this trial will be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. You may have a seat. Adjust that microphone so that it fits you comfortably. And if you'll state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My full name is Daniel Green. My last name Greene.
Sergeant Green, how you doing today?
I'm good.
All right, tell us where you work.
I work for the Colleton County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, and your rank is sergeant, obviously, is that correct?
That's correct.
Tell us just a little bit about yourself. Just give us just a little bit of your background that led you to your career in law enforcement, if you would, please.
Sure. I went to school here, grew up here, went to college at Charleston Southern University. I got a degree in social studies education, taught for a little while, and then got into law enforcement. Just kind of fell into it and liked it. And I've been here since 2014.
Okay. You started with the Sheriff's Department in 2014?
That's correct.
All right, and what was your first job that you did, or how does your career progressed?
I started at the jail. I worked there for just over a year, and then I was moved to the road patrol. I was on road patrol for several years. Moved up the ranks to sergeant, where I was a road patrol supervisor, and now I'm a detective.
Okay. When did you become detective?
Earlier last year. It would have been June of last year.
Back in June of 2021, what was your job at that particular time with the Sheriff's Department?
In June of 2021, I was a road patrol sergeant supervisor.
All right, and explain how that works. What's your exact role as a sergeant and a road patrol supervisor?
So for the most part, I'm assigned a team consisting of 3 to 4 deputies, just depends, that include a corporal as well as several other deputies. My job primarily is to supervise them in their in a 12-hour shift. We answer calls for service. Sometimes I'll go with other deputies to calls that require more than one officer to be present. But the majority of my job is supervising what they do.
And during June of 2021, were you working day shift or night shift, or how did that work?
I was on night shift at that point.
And what are the hours of the night shift?
So we swap every 2 months. So 2 months you'll be on days, 2 months you'll be on nights. For those hours, it's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Okay. And let me take you to the evening of June 7th, 2021. Were you working that particular evening?
I was.
And what shift were you working that day?
We were on night shift,
And again, so what hours would that be?
working from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
So you went on duty at 6 p.m., is that
I did,
correct?
yep.
Okay. And you said you're the sergeant. What was do you have a squad that you're supervising that are out during that shift? Explain that to the jury, if you would, please.
So that shift consisted of myself being the sergeant. I had a corporal and 2 deputies working as well. And at that point, I had a lieutenant who was my immediate supervisor. He was working as well.
All right, and again, you tell me who those people were?
Sure. So my corporal was Corporal Janicki, and the 2 deputies working with me were Deputy William Pruitt and Deputy Chad McDowell.
All right. And the lieutenant was who?
Lieutenant Lonnie Nettles.
Did you, on the evening of June 7th, 2021, get a call for service at 4147 Moselle Road?
I did.
You remember approximately what time that was?
Later in the evening, several hours into my shift.
Okay. And did you ultimately respond to that location?
I did.
What was reported to you that led to the call for service from dispatch?
That there was a caller who stated he had found his wife and son shot.
And so tell me what happens then. You get that report, what do you do?
So I get that call for service. Obviously, we immediately respond. In situations like that, we would respond with lights and sirens to get there as quickly as possible.
You're driving fast to get there?
Yes.
Lights are on?
Lights were on, siren was on. I think it still took me close to 20 minutes to actually get to the scene from where I was. But
You have to ask dispatch to clarify the address?
I did once I got out there. It's a very dark area, very rural area on Moselle Road. There were not a whole lot of residences in the area, and I did need clarification once I got out there to confirm the address. Then I located the address on a mailbox across the street from a driveway.
So you saw the mailbox in the driveway you entered, is that correct?
That's correct.
The driveway that you entered that had this mailbox, where did it ultimately lead? What structures were there as you pulled up to the scene?
As I pulled down the long driveway, when I got to the end of it, there was a dog kennel area on the left as well as a shed area on the right.
And that was the driveway with the mailbox, correct?
That was.
Is this location where the scene was, is it in Colleton County?
It is.
Tell me just a little bit before we get into more specifics. What was the, you said it was dark. What was the weather like? What was the conditions of the scene or the weather in the scene like?
So quite normal for June around here. It's rather hot and humid. It had been raining a little bit off and on that evening. It was not raining at the time that I actually responded to the scene.
Were you the first law enforcement officer or first responder on the scene?
I was.
Were there others, other first responders following close behind?
The additional first responder that was directly behind me worked for Carlton County Fire Rescue. He pulled in almost the same time I did.
When you would arrive at the scene, before we talk about what you actually experienced at this scene, what is your main job at a scene like this? What are you there to do as a first responder, the first officer on the scene?
Yeah, so a major crime scene like that, my job is to get there, secure the scene, and what I mean by secure the scene is ensure that there are no individuals there that would potentially cause harm to additional first responders coming there or any witnesses or victims that are already on scene, preserve any evidence that might be there, and then wait for investigators to arrive as I gather information from anybody else that is already on scene.
Okay, so you're going to gather basic information, but your job's not to investigate it in great detail.
That's correct.
Okay. As you arrived at this scene, again, what had been reported to you by dispatch?
That a male caller had called and said he found his wife and son shot.
And from that report to you, about how long did it take you to ultimately make it onto the scene?
It was roughly about 20 minutes.
When you arrived on scene, when you said one of the things that you do is secure the scene, were you at all concerned about any perpetrator still being there at that point in time?
When I arrived, not necessarily, just because he had already been there for quite a while. Whenever he called, it seemed, the way the call came in, that he discovered them like that and that there was nobody else there other than him and the wife and son.
So you're the first officer on scene, but you're not thinking the perpetrators are still there?
It's something you have to keep in the back of your mind, but not necessarily at the forefront.
Okay. All right. You didn't come in hot with guns drawn or anything like that?
No.
When you arrived at the scene and you walked and got out of your car, what did you see?
So as soon as I got out of my vehicle, I was walking down the rest of the driveway, which went between the dog kennel and the shed. As I could see Mr. Murdaugh down at the end of the driveway. As I approached toward him, I could see the male victim laying on the ground to my left, as well as the female victim on the ground to my right. The male victim was close to a small shed in the dog kennel on the left. There was a large deal of blood that had pooled around his body. Same thing for the female victim on the right. Also a large amount of blood around her body.
As you approached and at first saw the male victim and the female victims, what was your assessment? Was there any possible signs of life from your...
My initial assessment was that there was not. There appeared to be a large amount of blood around each of them, as well as brain matter.
Did you ultimately have a conversation with Mr. Murdaugh when you were out there?
I did.
And do you see him here in the courtroom today, the person that you talked to?
I do.
And can you point him out to the jury, please?
Yes, sir. He's right there, wearing a dark blue or black jacket.
Your Honor, can the record reflect that he's identified Mr. Murdaugh?
It does.
When you ultimately approached Mr. Murdaugh, what's the first thing that you did?
The first thing I did was ensure that he did not have any weapons on him. That's standard procedure for arriving on a scene like that. Any kind of weapons that are anywhere on the scene, I want to be aware of just so I can know whether they're there or not, and if they are there, who has access to them at any point. And that's for my safety as well as other responding officers and for anyone else that's on scene.
Did Mr. Murdaugh give you any possible explanation for this when you approached him?
His immediate reaction was to start telling me about an incident that had happened with his son with a boating accident.
With the boating accident?
Yes, sir.
Had you asked him anything about that?
I did not.
You ultimately, were you wearing a body-worn camera that particular day?
I was.
You ultimately had a conversation with Mr. Murdaugh for a fairly extended period of time, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you ever see any tears in your interactions with Mr. Murdaugh?
He did not appear to be crying. He was upset, but I did not see any visible tears.
Did Mr. Murdaugh tell you that he had any sort of firearm?
He did. He stated that he had left from that scene, went to the residence, grabbed a shotgun from that residence, and then brought it back because he felt like he needed to have it just in case something else were to happen.
He told you he had gone back to the residence after finding the victims to get that gun?
He did.
What, if anything, did you do once he told you that he had gotten a gun?
First, he pointed out where the gun was. It was leaning against the vehicle that he was driving at the time. I could see that it was a camouflage shotgun. I spoke with him for a few more minutes, and just based off of how nervous he was acting and anxious and upset, I decided it was in everyone's best interest to get that shotgun and secure it in my vehicle so that no one else had access to it.
So you put that shotgun in your vehicle, is that correct?
I did.
What did you ultimately do with that shotgun? Did you later turn it over to additional law enforcement?
Yes, after it was secured in my vehicle, once SLED arrived on scene to do their further investigation, it was then turned over to SLED.
Bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
Your Honor. State 3, I believe, I'll move the challenge without objection.
It's admitted without objection.
May I ask that we have the Elmo working, please? Judge, do you want to see it first? I believe it's submitted without objection. It's not a graphic image. Thank you, Your Honor. May I publish it to the jury?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to put what's been marked as... I'm going to put what's been marked as State's Exhibit 3 up on the screen and see if I can get it the right way. All right. You can't see. Can you see that? You probably can't.
I can.
You can? All right. And do you recognize the what's in that particular image?
I do.
All right. And tell me what that is, please.
That's the shotgun that I secured in my vehicle on the scene.
Okay. Let's see.
Proceed, Mr. Waters.
Yes, sir. Sergeant Green, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 4 for identification at this time. And see if you recognize this particular item.
Yes, sir, that would be the shotgun that I secured.
Your Honor, this time we would move Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Objection. Any objection?
No, sir.
Admitted.
May I have Sergeant Green show this firearm to the jury?
Yes.
I'll be sure not to point at anybody, of course. Do you know what gauge that firearm is?
Please, it's 12 gauge.
Thank you. All right, Sergeant Green, I'm going to show you one other document before we move on to some other matters. All right, Your Honor, I believe I'd move to admit that State's Exhibit 2 without objection.
And no objection, Your Honor.
All right, I'm going to show this exhibit to you real quick and see if you recognize this document.
Yes, sir, that would be the chain of custody for the shotgun.
All right, is there a signature on that document?
It is.
All right, and what does this chain document reflect? Can you just generally explain what this means to the jury, please?
That I originally took possession of that weapon and then turned it over to SLED investigators.
All right. May I publish this exhibit, Your Honor?
Yes.
So up here it lists that there was a Benelli Super Black Eagle. Did you unload this particular shotgun?
I did not.
Okay. But you ultimately turned the shotgun in its loaded state over to the agent listed here, is that
I
correct?
did. I did.
Did you alter or change the weapon in any way between the time you took it and the time you took it over to SLED?
No, I didn't manipulate it in any way.
Sergeant Green, I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification at this time as State's Exhibit number 1, see if you recognize this.
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, and can you tell the jury what this is on this disc right here?
That would be the body camera footage from that incident.
From your arrival at Moselle Road and through the investigation until at some point you turned it off after it no longer needed to be on, is that
That's
correct?
correct.
All right, Your Honor, at this time I'll move to admit State's Exhibit number 1.
That clarification, that is this officer's body cam, which is a camera that's mounted on his body, is that correct?
That's correct. It's mounted
Okay.
on me. Yeah.
So admitted.
Your Honor, permission to publish this exhibit to the jury. I'll need the. Your Honor, I would point out that there are graphic images on this, so everybody needs to cover up their monitors, please.
Parties to control what is presented and published in accordance with the court's order. The parties to police that yourselves.
Your Honor, we intend on covering the screen up when he gets to the graphic images and then uncovering it.
They come pretty quickly, as you.
I remember. So, Mr. Griffin's ready.
Yeah, stay in town. I'm heading out there.
Advised a female shot in the head. My son is shot also, not breathing. Stand out further.
717 around Moselle.
Sergeant Green, this is your body cam video, is that correct?
That's correct.
The first 15 minutes or so of this video are you running code, running at full speed or at least reasonable speed to get to this scene as fast as you can. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. My lights and siren were activated so I can get there quickly.
Your Honor, at this time, I'm going to fast forward it until he arrives, I believe without objection from the defense.
Without objection, Your Honor.
Central on Beta 1 SUV station at Moselle on Crosswalk.
Okay, buddy.
Central Battalion 1 to there, waiting for
Past the driveway that I was supposed to have turned down. Like I said, everything's kind of dark out there. It wasn't clearly indicated, so.
Central, that was 4147 or 57?
4147. Should be a vehicle in the driveway with the flashes on. That's going to be the caller.
Copy, I'm going on scene. It's got a long driveway, but the mailbox out front is labeled. He's not at the end of the driveway. He might be up by the house.
The correct number for 4147 Moselle?
It is.
And is that the incident location where you discovered the victims?
That's correct.
Copy.
I'm getting out. Let's call her now.
Copy.
Right there to the left of the screen, what did you see right there?
To the left was Paul's body. He was laying face down on the ground. Large pool of blood around him, as well as a great deal of water that was immediately around his body.
Was it that water, was it just around, was it down the entire kennel concrete pad, or was it mostly just?
No, you could see walking down the kennel as I got out. The closer I got to Paul's body, the more water there was.
Had it been raining enough at this point in time to wet the entire, to cause that amount of water?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Objection overruled.
Answer the question, please.
I don't recall if it had been raining a whole lot that evening, but given where the water was, it did not appear that rain had caused that water.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is an objection. If I sustain the objection, you are to then disregard the question and any responses. If I overrule the objection, then you may consider the responses and the question is deemed appropriate. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to back it up just a little bit, apparently too far, so I'm just going to roll from here again.
Central 717 scene is secured at a Whiskey Fox, Whiskey Mike.
What are we seeing to the right of this image?
So on the right would be Maggie's body, also laying face down on the ground. A large pool of blood around her head.
And we see an individual standing. Who is that?
The individual standing in the background would be Mr. Murdaugh.
The person you previously identified in this courtroom?
That's correct.
And just to be clear, this location that you're standing right now is in Colleton County, is that correct?
It is, yes.
I want to let you know because of the scene, I did go get a gun and bring it down here.
It's in your vehicle? Do you have any guns on you at all?
No, sir, it's leaning up against the side of my car.
You're fine, man, you're fine. Turn around for me.
I don't have any.
Okay, yes, sir, I see that. Okay. This is your wife and son? Okay.
I noticed you shined your flashlight just a few seconds ago on the black vehicle. What did you shine your flashlight on just then?
You could see the shotgun leaning up against the side of that vehicle.
Were the flashers on the vehicle right there in the image?
I believe so, yes.
It's bad. Check the pulses.
Yes, sir. This is the firearm you brought from inside the house?
Sir, yes, sir. I went and got, this is a long story. My son was in a boat wreck months back. He's been getting threats. Most stuff has been benign stuff we didn't take serious.
Okay.
He's been getting like punched. I know that's what it is.
Okay. When did,
Was that when you previously testified that he mentioned the boat case or the boat wreck?
That's correct. Prior to me asking him anything about it, he did mention it.
did you get home right when you called, or did you go to the house first? Where is the house?
I came to the house first. My mom has late stages Alzheimer's and my dad is in the hospital.
Okay.
I left, I don't know what time. I can go back on my phone and tell you the exact times. Did you check?
Did I check what?
Did you check them?
We got medical guys that's what they're gonna do, okay?
What are they doing? Can they hurry?
They are, yes, sir. That gentleman that was out here already, he's one of the battalion chiefs, okay?
Right before that discussion, did Mr. Murdaugh offer to go on his phone and check?
He did. He did. He wanted to verify exactly the timing of his arrival.
How did you pull up? You from back there?
I went to the house and they weren't home, which was odd. I tried to call.
Okay.
And then I knew they had been down here before I left to go to my mom's.
Okay.
And so that is loaded.
Okay.
You might want to unload it. But,
Is this the only firearm with you?
To it, sir.
This is the only one, or is there any more in the truck?
I believe that's it.
You think that's the only one? Okay.
I'm 99%.
Do you normally
sure that's
have any other firearms in your vehicle?
I don't, but
Okay.
occasionally there's a pistol in there.
Okay.
So you're putting something on your hands. What are you doing right there?
Those are just gloves, so I could put on my hand to limit the contamination of any evidence.
You put those on before you handle the firearm, is that
Yes.
correct?
Just wait right here for me for a second, okay?
Central.
Copy.
What are you doing right now?
At this point, I'm walking back to my vehicle to secure that shotgun inside my vehicle.
We can actually see you holding it to the left of the screen, is that correct?
That's correct. That's me holding the barrel of that shotgun.
Explain to us real quick a body-worn camera. Where is that located and where are these images coming from?
I generally put it right here on my chest, dead center in my chest.
And how is it activated? How is it turned off? Can you explain that to the jury a little bit as well?
So most of these cameras are activated in the patrol vehicles that deputies on patrol have. They're activated whenever you activate your blue lights. So as soon as I turn my blue lights on, it activates my dash camera as well as my body-worn camera.
And then how do you ultimately turn it off?
It's got a button on the front of it that you can press. If it did not originally activate it, you would press that button to turn it on, to start the recording, and then whenever you're done recording, you press that same button to stop the recording.
In this particular instance, how did it get activated? Was it when you turned on your blue lights to run code to the scene?
That's correct. It was activated with my blue lights.
And I've used the term run code. Do you know what that means?
Yes.
And can you explain that to the jury, please?
Sure. Running code is just whenever you turn your lights on as well as your siren to get wherever you need to get fast.
When you're moving quickly to respond to an emergency situation.
That's correct.
653 on 7. Go ahead, sir. Well, I've already spoken with Captain Daly.
Right there, you laid the shotgun inside your vehicle, is that correct?
That's correct. I laid it in front of the passenger seat in the front.
Did it remain there until it was turned over to SLED?
It did.
Go ahead, sir.
To the left of the screen, again, that's where the Paul was, is that correct?
That's correct. That's Paul laying on the ground.
And is that where you saw the water that you described earlier?
It is.
Well, we've got crime scene in contact with them. He's also going to give us the assistance of a couple of field agents. Roll that. No, they come out.
They are dead, aren't they?
Just turn on those.
Yes, sir. That's what it looks like.
Red. All the dead. Where are you now?
What is Mr. Murdaugh doing? Did you ever see him, any tears, any physical tears?
I did not.
Did you ever see him approach the bodies?
I did not see him approach them, no.
Did you observe any visible blood on him?
There was no blood on him that I could see.
The bodies, as you saw them, was there a lot of blood around them, given the injuries they had suffered?
Yes, there was a pool of blood around each of the bodies that extended out from the body.
All right. Yeah, the police are here now. The police are here now. That's my brother.
Okay. When was the last time you were here with them? Or talked to them or anything like that?
It was earlier tonight. I don't know the exact time, but
Okay.
I left. I was probably gone an hour and a half from my mom's, and I saw them about 45 minutes before that.
Okay.
I rode around with Paul for 2 hours this afternoon in the pickup truck.
That's your son, Paul? Okay.
Somebody gonna check them.
Yes, sir. They've already checked them.
They did check them.
Yes, sir.
It's official that they're dead.
Yes, sir. That's what it looks like.
When you observed these victims, was it obvious that they had injuries incompatible with life?
Yes, any reasonable person that came upon those bodies would have come to a conclusion that they were deceased.
Sorry. I'm very sorry. Call her here.
What's her name?
Her name's Maggie Murdaugh. Margaret Brandstetter Murdaugh. How you doing?
What's her birthday?
Pause it right there. What did the defendant just say? Let me back it up.
Margaret Brandstetter Murdaugh. How you doing?
What did the defendant say right there?
So while I'm in the process of gathering information about the two victims from Mr. Murdaugh, somebody walks by behind me and he pauses what he's telling me to say, "Hey, how you doing?"
How you doing?
Yeah.
And who was that he said that to?
I'm not 100% certain. I believe it was a fire rescue individual.
What's her birthday?
9/15/68.
Okay. And what's your son's first name? You said Paul?
Paul Terry Murdaugh.
And what's his birthday?
Jason, do you have anybody coming through town that can stop and pick up that tent? I see lights off in the distance.
What, are they covering them up?
I got some getting dressed now, Sheriff. I'll have somebody stop and grab it.
Tell them they don't have to do that. They don't need to. Preserve what we can.
653. Where's it at? I'm in town.
I should try to be Bill Day, because he's gonna be the only one that's got access.
What's Paul's
to where it is
birthday?
right now.
Copy.
April 14th, 1999, sir.
Put it up as wide as you can. That's fine. You said 99?
Sir?
He was born in 99?
He was born April 14th, 1999.
Okay. What's your first name, sir?
My name is Alex Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
Let me ask you this. In your interactions with Mr. Murdaugh, was he able to understand your questions and respond appropriately to what you were asking?
Yes.
Was he catatonic in any way?
No. He was able to answer all the questions that I asked him.
Was he panicking in any way?
He seemed upset, but I wouldn't say panicky.
Did you notice any labored breathing or anything like that from Mr. Murdaugh?
Yeah, he was breathing heavily. Never once did he complain about not being able to breathe. I mean, there were fire rescue guys out there. He didn't ask for any kind of medical attention or anything like that due to not being able to breathe.
Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
You familiar with the location?
No.
Sure.
Hey, Cody, come around the truck and then go to the building. Come around the truck and then. Yes.
I don't know if it's
What's that?
ours or not. There's a set of footprints behind the trailer there too.
Who's that individual right there?
I'm not sure of his name. I just know that he works for Carlton County Fire Rescue. Carlton County Fire Rescue.
In the background in the center of the screen, it looks like somebody's doing something with some yellow tape. Can you explain what that is to the jury, please?
That's correct. That's Deputy Pruitt, one of the deputies that I supervised. I instructed him to put up crime scene tape to include that vehicle. We put up crime scene tape to try to keep people out of the immediate crime scene area, preserve any possible evidence that's there.
At this point in time, did you notice any evidence of firearms such as casings or spent shells or anything like that?
Yeah, as I was walking through, you can't necessarily see it on my body camera, but as I was walking through, I could see shell casings, particularly around Maggie's body.
All right. And a shell casing, would they be for like a rifle round or a pistol round?
They appeared to be rifle rounds.
And could you tell just from walking by what type of ammunition at that point in time?
I couldn't tell what type. I could tell that they appeared to be rifle. That's about it.
And again, you weren't stopping to collect those. You were managing the scene as you described before.
That's correct.
Let's go over to that corner of the building.
I'm almost to you. Let me see what we have first and whether or not we're going to handle that part or not.
What are you shining your light on right there?
So there in the background behind where Mr. Murdaugh is standing, you can see several sets of tire tracks. The grass was really wet that night, so those tracks appeared to be really fresh. So it caught my eye.
All right. And why did it catch your eye?
It just seemed odd that it appeared to be that many sets of tire tracks since he said he pulled up, went to the house, and came back. It just appeared that there were more than just that.
It appeared that there were more tracks than just that.
That's correct.
I see quite a few tire tracks in here. Were any of these you going in and out?
No, I came in here and I left one time and I came back.
Okay.
The rest of them, maybe from earlier, but
Okay.
only two are mine.
Did you go out this way at all?
No.
So they try.
Hey, stay here. Got a whole bunch of stuff right there. I don't want to disturb.
Yeah, if I find out the door is, we can kind of get around that way.
Your best way is probably going to be back through those rocks because we can't get any tracks off those rocks anymore.
We'll go back around the other way we just came.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, I'll get that in a little bit. Yeah,
Okay.
Whose vehicle are you approaching right now?
That was the vehicle that Mr. Murdaugh said that he had approached that scene in.
Was that a black Suburban to your recollection?
It is.
What unit's 23 on Mosaic? I was 7 unit on scene. Are you behind the house?
There's several of us out here. There's
right there, that would be Maggie's body right in front of that shed, is that correct?
That's correct. It's covered up by a sheet at this point.
A long dirt driveway right next to the mailbox says 4147, and you'll see all our lights down here at this shed thing.
You ain't come through Brick Hollow.
Negative.
Nothing, I'm on duty here out of Mobile.
Who's that standing way off in the distance there?
That would be Mr. Murdaugh.
Where did he spend the majority of his time while you were there after your initial interaction with him?
From this point on, his general time was spent in that area where he's currently standing.
Pretty far away from the scene?
That's correct.
LA 653. Telephone City.
What was occurring right there?
So what was occurring right there?
Yeah.
So both of those deputies, or Deputy Pruitt would be on the left and Deputy McDowell would be on the right. Deputy McDowell was taking small pieces of crime scene tape and just setting them by shell casings, I believe. As road patrol officers, we don't generally have those little placards that you'll a lot of times see in crime scene photos. But to prevent somebody from accidentally stepping on them due to it being so dark out there, we tend to take something small like a piece of paper, a piece of crime scene tape, set it next to it just to indicate it a little bit better.
Again, part of the job of a first responder to sort of protect the scene until the crime scene investigators get there.
That's correct.
Both these individuals, were you supervising them that night?
I was, yes.
Yeah.
Looking at this perspective right here, to the left of the screen is whose body?
To the left right there in the forefront would be Maggie, and in the further back you can also see where Paul is laying.
Okay. Was Paul next to or in the kennel area?
Yes.
I think his brother. He said he was calling somebody. He said he was calling somebody. Yeah, I'm sure he was. There's a couple of shell cases right there.
Yeah, those would be easy to find. I was just marking a couple of where in the ground where it might be harder to see at some point. Y'all familiar with this family? Yes.
I wasn't until he told me names. Last name.
Murdaugh.
Did you know this family prior to this?
I did not.
I don't think there's gonna be anything.
What's that?
Did I tell you?
You said for Evo to do?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Hey,
Who was Evo?
Evo would be Deputy McDowell's K-9.
hey, watch your step. Huh? There are? Okay.
Who is that approaching right now?
That would be my immediate supervisor at the time, Lieutenant Lonnie Nettles.
The gentleman in the white shirt is the husband of her, father of him. That is Paul Murdaugh. That's just his mother. Paul Murdaugh was that guy in the boating accident from a while back, if you remember.
Yeah.
Just then, were you describing the boat wreck?
Yes, it had been in local news previously, so.
And it was your understanding that Paul was involved in that?
In some way, I had no idea about the actual details of the case to know what his involvement was, honestly.
Most likely. He did have a firearm whenever I pulled up. It's a shotgun. It's been secured in my vehicle.
Someone coming, when you get a chance, can you get dispatch phone call?
You will have to give me just a few minutes, but yes, I will.
That dispatch call, was that related to the case in any way?
I don't believe it was. I don't remember what that phone call ended up being about. As a supervisor, if a lot of us are tied up at one time, they will tend to give me a phone call to let me know that a certain call is pending or something else is going on. Just to help keep the radio traffic free, they'll call me on my cell phone instead.
Did your entire squad respond to this particular call, or did somebody?
There was one deputy that remained in service.
Okay. Remained out, did not respond here, but remained on the road?
Correct.
We can start a log. Who's the most expendable that can start a log? Let's put it that way.
This is, can you start a crime scene log, please?
A log started. Sled's on the way. Let's push. Can we run the tape?
2007 Brady
There to there.
yeah.
Yes.
From that last pole right there to that last
Get a
pole.
piece of paper, start writing names and times. You don't have any kind of paper?
Who's that individual right there in the center of the screen?
To the right. Detective to the right?
Yes.
That would be Deputy Pruitt.
And what did you just ask him to do?
Start a crime scene log.
And tell the jury what that is.
Sure. So a crime scene log is established as soon as additional people start to arrive on scene. We document exactly who comes into the actual crime scene, as well as the exact time that they come into the crime scene.
Here, borrow that.
We can push it from that pole to that pole.
Yep. Sure. I do see some that look old or fresh. Old, yes.
What are we doing right here with the tape?
So I'm securing it to the corner of that part of the shed to run it along to the shed on the opposite side of that area. We just expanded the crime scene out a little bit further.
To protect a larger area?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Do you need to speak more directly into the mic, or can you increase the volume, Madam Clerk, of that mic? Just a little.
This one that's working?
I'm referring to the witness.
Oh, sorry.
Increase his volume, or? Thank you.
Yes, sir. I usually don't have a problem being too quiet, but speak up for us if you would, please. All right, so you're securing the crime scene tape. Let's proceed.
I'll just hold the light for you. Go away to that other side. Marty, let's just keep our fingers crossed. Yeah, I think we got it.
This is 3, all the responding units to Moselle Road, stop at the road. No one else come down the dirt road. Stop at the road.
287, I'll be doing 66 on 95. Copy.
What's the other way up here?
Come back that way, I guess. Where the house is, I guess.
Okay, that must be.
You referring to the Whiskey Mike, last you off with the key? Affirmative.
We've heard on this video the term Whiskey Mike. Can you tell me what that term refers to?
Yeah, when we say Whiskey Mike, we're referring to a white male. A Whiskey Fox or a Whiskey Foxtrot would be a white female.
And in the context of this particular scene, who's the Whiskey Mike and who's the Whiskey Fox or Whiskey Foxtrot?
As I was approaching, you could hear me say to dispatch from my radio that there was a Whiskey Mike, the Whiskey Mike referring to Paul, Whiskey Fox referring to Maggie.
Do we have anything else? Negative. Copy.
To the very right of the screen, well, strike that, I'll wait.
Correct.
Like I was trying to say, I have a notepad, it's just I'm
Yes.
using the back side of all the paper, so all the front side of the paper has names and information on it.
Well, you can borrow mine for a minute. It's perfectly fine, Cody.
I just didn't want you to go, what you doing, fucking paper, I have paper for calls.
Do you not have any crime scene log sheets? Hey, it's 717, I was asked to give you guys a call.
I didn't know this.
Hi. Okay. Okay. I will inquire and I'll get back to you. Okay.
Want to close it in?
Yeah.
That's all right, I'm gonna grab it.
There, do you recognize those individuals?
I do.
Can you tell us who they are?
On the far left would be Detective Tyndall. In the forefront toward the center would be Captain Chapman. And on the other side of him, in the lighter colored shirt with the black vest, was Barry McCroy, worked for Fire Rescue.
Okay. Did the sheriff respond to this particular incident, to your recollection?
Yes, he did.
But as far as who was the senior officer actually working the scene at this point in time until SLED arrives, who was it at this point?
That would be Captain Chapman.
Captain Chapman?
That's correct.
That's all right, I'm gonna grab a couple.
Well, I got some right here, Judge.
Hey, you want us to close that in?
Sir, what's that?
You want us to close it in?
Yeah.
Then the guy, what the other guy, whoever Eric is, and Mr. Caller, there's a guy over here that's wanting to talk to them. I told him to leave that.
Don't even know who Eric is. I know an Alex over there.
Alex.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a guy over here that wants to talk to him.
Yeah, but I didn't know if you wanted me to tell him that or if you wanted me to just chill for a minute. Or if you wanted me to escort him over.
He does not need to walk over
No,
there.
I mean up a long way.
He does not need to go over there.
So you can stay there.
He can.
Let me ask you this. Before you had referred to a brother arriving, is that correct?
Yes.
And was that a brother? Was he allowed to talk to Alec and go over to Alec?
I believe he did. I don't recall. I never actually interacted with him at all.
And then this discussion right here with Deputy Pruitt, what was going on right there?
So there was someone that had arrived on scene and wanted to go and speak with Mr. Murdaugh. I told him to just wait a minute on allowing him over there so we could determine the best way to allow them to talk, simply because the crime scene was so large and we did not want to contaminate anything that didn't need to be.
Okay. To your knowledge, was that individual, whoever it was, allowed to interact with Mr. Murdaugh?
I believe so. He was eventually, yes.
People that arrived were allowed to go see Mr. Murdaugh, is that correct?
That's correct.
He was not in custody at any time, is that correct?
No.
I don't have the caller and the caller's brother's name in here, because I don't know the names yet, but I can.
I already wrote it in there.
I don't know where you were at, I was just found the first empty page I can find.
Female victim, male caller.
And then the other guy though, I mean, he hasn't came inside the tape yet.
Don't have to worry about him. Just make sure you get the, here.
So you and all of us got it?
Go ahead.
Is that what you're about to say?
Yes.
What are you doing on the computer right here? Do you recall?
Yeah, so on those computers are mounted in our patrol vehicles. We can see details of the call for service or other calls for service. In this case, I was looking at the information for the incident on Moselle to determine what units had been dispatched, what units arrived, and when they arrived, due to Deputy Pruitt trying to establish the crime scene log.
And you use the term call for service, which is a police term, but that essentially means responding to any emergency or
Any type of call. Any citizen that would call our dispatch center to request law enforcement assistance or fire rescue assistance, it's called, we just refer to it as a call for service.
I came on scene at 22:26.
22:26?
Yes.
Yep.
You say you came on scene at 22:26?
That's correct.
For those of us who don't know military time, can you tell us what that is?
That would be 10:26 p.m.
And that's June 7th, 2021?
That's correct.
And whoever U21 is with fire rescue, just write U21, fire rescue U21. And then
That was the same time as you?
he came on scene, yeah, same time as me, it's fine. Medic 18 at 22:27.
Had it started to rain more at this point?
Yeah, it had started raining at this point, yes.
.758 on scene 22:30, same time as you. .653 on scene at 22:39.
22:39?
Yep.
Those numbers that you're referring to, what do those represent?
So the numbers would be the badge numbers of individuals arriving on scene.
You're just recording when various people arrived in the computer?
They're recorded in the computer, so when we arrive on scene, we let dispatch know our number and that we're on scene. They log it into the computer, and then we can then put it on our crime scene log.
That's all I have as far as times on this goes.
187 Central. Alright. Copy. When you're clear, I have a call on Majestic of a suspicious vehicle. Copy. Where's that located? 223 Majestic Way in Titusville. 10-4. There's a Cartersville unit that can assist, that'd be great.
Pretty sure Majestic Oaks is their jurisdiction anyway.
Central 505, I believe that's not jurisdiction anyway, I'll take care of that.
Copy.
Twenty-three Majestic Oaks.
That individual walking off to the left of the screen, who was that?
The one walking away from the screen or that just approached?
Walking away.
That was Deputy McDowell.
All right, and then the center of the screen, who was that?
The one that just walked up and is in center screen now would be Captain Kraus.
All right, and then next to him, facing the body camera?
That would be Captain Chapman.
All right, and then to the far right?
Detective Tyndall.
Correction. Because I know what type of vehicle she had.
Were there dogs in those kennels to your recollection?
There were a couple of dogs. I don't remember the exact number, but I do remember seeing some.
And the research, it's her yard that belongs to her. She says she can only see the tail lights of the vehicle. She is also threatening to use it for possible. It happened about 5 minutes ago.
I'm in there, you can't tell us what to go down Buffalo.
Copy.
Yes, sir. We're going to discuss it later and find out.
Okay, just I'll make sure I didn't miss something.
Nope. That discussion right there, did that have anything to do with the crime scene or anything like that?
No, it was not related at all.
What'd you just put on your hands then?
Those would be latex gloves.
And the gloves you put on that you described earlier to the jury, what were those gloves?
Those are more tactical gloves. They're not necessarily ideal for handling any kind of evidence, but due to me already being out there next to the shotgun, I did not have any latex gloves on my person, so I used what was available.
And why are you putting on latex gloves right now?
They were wanting to look under the sheet where Paul was, so just to prevent any kind of contamination of any possible evidence at all, we just always put gloves on.
Well, the dad's over there. Actually, hold on. Some people just want to.
Fire rescue might have some more sheets we can steal.
That's right, it shouldn't be about 550 law enforcement or.
There is law enforcement.
Unless it's the shortest presented blackout's ever been made.
I don't think he put that long back.
What is that discussion about right there?
So the whole purpose for even trying to look up under him was to determine if there was an additional firearm on scene already, possibly under Paul. There was 300 blackout casings found near Maggie. They were trying to determine if there was possibly a 300 blackout rifle under Paul.
And why was were y'all concerned that there may be one under Paul?
We just trying to rule it out as a possibility
And what was that possibility then?
that he could have shot Maggie,
And then did what?
shot himself.
So you're looking to see if there's a gun underneath, if he had shot himself and then fallen on top of it?
That's correct.
I haven't asked the dad about the phone, but dad did say he came over and checked the pulses.
Did you see a phone near Paul when you arrived on the scene?
Yes, there was a phone laying on top of him near his back pockets of his shorts.
Back up just a little bit. Is that it right down there at the bottom?
That's it.
Unless it's the shortest blackouts ever been made.
I don't think he put that phone back. I haven't asked the dad about the phone, but dad did say he came over and checked the pulses. Beyond that, I don't know what else he may have done. He did have a shotgun with him. I have secured that in my vehicle.
Yeah, but he set off with a shot. This is one always concealed in it. Yeah, but that's
Yep. So I've got multiple gunshots out of that window too.
Do we see a shell?
At least 3.
Shells.
Got it.
Right to the left of the screen, there appears to be, what does that appear to be to the very left of the screen?
There's some dog crates over there. On top of one of the dog crates is actually a dead chicken.
Say that again, I'm sorry?
A dead chicken
Okay.
on the far left-hand side of the screen.
Could you, Your Honor, with your permission, could you step down to the screen and point what you're talking about to the jury?
Okay.
It's difficult to see, but right here on top of that small dog crate was what appeared to be a dead chicken. I'm sure if you did that, I couldn't see it. Could you do that?
Do it again, please.
This area right here. Right, thank you.
Yes.
In and out times or just times arrive? Like if they exit multiple times and come back in?
You don't need to keep doing all that.
Okay. I wanted to make sure before.
Yeah.
Is that it, that your light's on right there?
That's correct. That's when I was really noticing the chicken.
Just so you know, I've got at least 5 holes in the window in the back of that shed where rounds were exiting out the back that way.
Which is gonna be what, because of the more than you use carry shotgun when you got
It is currently in my vehicle.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's stand for a moment. All right, we'll be seated. You may proceed.
That's the extent of the that state will publish at this time, Your Honor.
Let me ask you a few other questions if I could.
That would be, excuse me, Sergeant Green. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit number 5 to your testimony and see if you recognize this image.
Yes, sir. That would be an image from my body camera when I was looking at the tire tracks in the grass.
Your Honor, this time I would move to admit State's Exhibit 5, I believe, without objection.
Any objection to State's Exhibit number 5? Submitted without objection. Yes. Publish any exhibit that has been admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, it doesn't show up on the screen that great, but who is that person in the image right there?
That would be Mr. Murdaugh.
All right, and then just kind of in this area, it's more clear on the video, but that would be the tire
Yeah.
tracks you described earlier?
Yes, where I'm shining my flashlight at that point is where the tire tracks were.
We cut the video off after playing sort of the relevant parts, but what did you do for the remainder of this scene as the evening continued?
So the remaining part of my role would have just been making sure the crime scene stayed secure, people stayed out of where they weren't supposed to be. Investigators were handling the remainder of the investigation.
Did eventually anyone from the SLED, the State Law Enforcement Division, show up?
They did. I don't believe that would have been captured on my body camera, but they did, yes.
At some point, did you like to turn your body camera off?
I did. I cleared it with my supervisor, Captain Kraus, to ensure that I would not be needed for any additional investigative purposes, talking to Mr. Murdaugh, or handling any additional evidence. And once that was okayed, I turned it off.
And so that was consistent with standard police procedures and practices, and when to turn the body camera off?
That's correct.
You just didn't decide to do it willy-nilly or anything?
That's correct.
At what point, just roughly, do you remember, did you clear the scene or leave the scene?
I don't think I left the scene until several hours later.
Were you still there when SLED crime scene arrived?
Yes.
Did you remain the entire time they were there, or did you leave at some point?
I would have left prior to the end of my shift. I couldn't tell you the exact time that it was, but they were multiple units, including SLED and Carleton County investigators, still on scene when I left.
That's all the questions after this witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Take set up some of the audio visual stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break at this time. Please go to the jury room. Please do not discuss the case.
Steve?
You may bring the jury. You may proceed.
Your Honor. For my own edification, I'm curious. I've called over several weeks, left you voicemails for you to call me back and talk with me. Have I not?
I haven't received any voicemails.
You don't check your voicemail?
Did you call my cell phone?
No, I called your office.
Okay.
I don't have your cell phone.
Okay. It's possible they sent you to the wrong one. I don't know.
But you've spent an extensive amount of time talking to Mr. Waters about your testimony, have you not?
I've spoken with him a few times, yes.
How many times?
3 or 4, maybe at least.
And has he reviewed with you the points he was trying to make?
We've discussed the body camera footage extensively.
Right. Let me go to a specific piece of video. I apologize, Your Honor. The AV situation requires me to have my AV guy work on there. Did you get that list? So, as he's preparing this, you indicated you were asked by Mr. Waters. Said there was water on the ground, right? It hadn't been raining, and you saw water, right?
That's correct.
And as I understand it, and we're going to look at the video in just a minute, that water was primarily, at least what we see in your video, on the concrete area around the dog pens, correct?
That's what it appeared, yes.
Okay. And let's go to that first.
Comment, share.
Sorry, the technology is difficult. Glad to help. Glad to help.
Comment, share.
Go ahead a little bit further. Okay, back it up just a little bit, could you? Just back it up. Okay, yeah, now start right there. I think I can stop it just a second.
Share.
Okay, stop it. Now, you're walking down in front of the dog pens. Is this the water you're referring to?
Yes.
And you have dogs?
I have one dog.
You don't keep in a pen?
No, he stays in the house.
Okay. But if you had hunting dogs, and you had this line of you, how many pens do you think there were?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I mean, there's a lot.
8, 9, 10?
Sure.
And are you familiar with the concept of washing a pen out after a dog defecates in the pen?
I've never personally done it, but I'm sure that's what you would do to clean out a pen.
Okay. And in the pen, I mean, there's water inside the pens and outside the pens, correct?
That's what it looks like.
Okay. Go ahead. Again, we're looking at the dog pen, and the water appears to be outside the pen on the concrete.
I would object. I think that the video needs to be stopped for counsel to ask this question and for the witness to respond.
You're posing a question while playing a video,
I'm sorry, Errol.
or making a statement while playing a video.
I'm sorry, the technology again is beyond my experience. Okay, so again, this shows the same area, shows water on the concrete outside these dog pens, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Go to the next one, please. So again, this shows, and actually there's a light shining and you see a couple dogs. So those pens are occupied by dogs. There's water outside the pen and inside the pen as if somebody had attempted to wash something out of the pens, correct?
There is water both inside and outside of the pen, yes.
We got one more. So I want you to go to the transcript. You need to switch it to this. Again, I apologize, Your Honor, but the technology is more complicated than. Okay. So let's proceed on. Let's see if I can clarify a couple matters. Let's talk about this shotgun. This is the shotgun that Mr. Murdaugh was carrying or had leaning up a car against a car when you got there. Is that correct?
It was leaning up against that vehicle, yes.
And according to what you testified to just a moment ago, these are the shells, the chain of custody on the shotgun and the shell, they went together.
Whenever I released the shotgun to the SLED agent who took possession of it, I was unaware of any shells that may have been inside of it at the time that it was handed over. That was what was discovered inside the gun, is my understanding.
Okay. Where's that chain of evidence documented? Okay, would you publish this to the jury, please?
You would like me to read it?
Yes, please.
The Camo Benelli Super Black Eagle 3 12-gauge shotgun, serial number U573210E17, one unfired shot shell 12-gauge Federal, one unfired shot shell Winchester 16-gauge.
Okay, so there's a 12-gauge shell and a 16-gauge shell.
Yes.
12-gauge shotgun.
Yes.
This may be way beyond your experience, but can you fire a 16-gauge shotgun shell from a 12-gauge shotgun?
I wouldn't recommend trying it.
You recommend what?
I would not recommend trying it. I don't know that it would actually work or not.
Could it result in damage to the person trying to fire the shotgun?
More than likely.
Jack, he's already said he doesn't have an answer to that.
Objection's overruled.
So you would not, you can actually harm yourself, it could blow up if you pull the trigger on a 16 gauge and a 12 gauge shotgun.
I've never tried it nor seen it tried, so I don't
And the
know.
reason you don't do that is because you could have personal harm from doing it, right?
It's possible.
So this shotgun, according to the chain of evidence you just read, has a 16 gauge and a 12 gauge in it.
Correct.
And was leaning up against the car.
It was, the shotgun was.
Now, I'm sort of interested as to,
Sure.
I'm sort of interested as to why, well, let me just cut to the chase on this. There's discussions on this tape, or maybe others, that there was a theory that Paul had shot his mother and then shot himself. Is that correct? That's out on the scene.
Yes.
She had been shot multiple times, and he had been shot with a shotgun. At least one of the shots, we all believe was upward. That's why his brains were all over the ceiling.
That part, I don't know. I wasn't involved in that part of it.
At the scene.
I did not discuss anything being shot upward. I don't recall saying that.
Did you hear discussions to that of your fellow officers?
Of a shot being fired upward? That's what it looked like they were saying, yes.
Okay. And further, I think in front of you, one of the officers saying that brains are on the ceiling, there's blood all over the place, correct?
I don't recall them saying brain was upward. I don't recall.
Okay. And further, you, as you're discussing this with them, indicate, let me make sure I get this correct. You indicate there are multiple, or someone indicates to you there are multiple blackout rounds around Maggie's body in the vicinity, correct?
Not rounds, but shell casings.
Sorry, shell casings. Now, let me ask you this. When you got there, didn't the fire chief and fire department arrive before you did?
No, sir, I was first on scene.
Okay, did they arrive while you were there?
One of the fire rescue workers, I believe it was Barry McCroy.
And when you got there, we hear unidentified person, and in your notes you indicate it was the fire chief, I believe, that indicated to you, pointed out to you tire tracks, and you went over and looked at those tire tracks, and there were multiple tire tracks coming and going, correct?
I don't know that someone indicated them to me. I believe I just saw them.
Okay. And what did you do to preserve those?
The tire tracks, nothing.
And you certainly are not an expert in tire tracks.
I'm not.
So you couldn't tell whether it was multiple vehicles or one vehicle.
No.
And it may have been multiple vehicles.
May have been.
Did you take pictures of the tracks?
I did not take any pictures of the scene.
Instruct anyone to take pictures of the tracks?
No, sir, that's not my job.
When SLED arrived, did you tell them about the tracks?
No, sir, not my job.
Do you regret not doing that?
It's not part of my job description.
So what's your job to even tell them there were multiple tire tracks?
If it had come up, if I had been asked, yes.
And in addition to that, since they were not secured in any way, multiple vehicles, law enforcement vehicles and others, drove over those tracks.
That's possible. I wasn't over there the whole time to know what kind of vehicles were driving the area.
Well, by the time SLED got there, did you strike that? You never took SLED over and pointed out tire tracks?
Not to my recollection, I did not.
Was there somebody there with your department that should have done that?
I have no idea what they do with their job descriptions as far as what they point out to additional investigators.
Did somebody from Fire and Rescue point out footprints?
I believe on my body camera there is a fire rescue individual pointing out some footprints.
Okay. Did you take pictures of those?
I did not.
Did you tell SLED about them?
I did not.
So nobody attempted to determine whether those were Maggie's footprints, Paul's footprints, or at least that night there was no effort by you or your department to preserve those?
By me, no. I cannot speak for everyone else.
Okay. And let me ask you this. How about go to 4439, please? And let's watch 10, at least 10, if not 15 seconds of that. Okay, if you go to page 17, line 10.
Your Honor, I'd object. They're putting a transcript that's not been.
No, we're going to play the video.
It's up on the screen. It's up on the screen, Your Honor. I'd object.
I apologize.
Can you take it down, please? Thank you.
We have to prepare the transcript. It's synced with the video.
Well, I object to that. Your Honor, I object. This transcript's not been provided. There's no need for a transcript. The officer is here. They can play the video and he can comment.
The transcript being offered.
Not all I'm using it to direct the audio visual man to record.
Well, you have questions for the witness, questions for your IT guy, you're just reading, ready to proceed. I understand. We're waiting for you. Okay.
Yep.
I'm ready. What was the time? 17.
It's page 17. Line, start at line 8. No, I don't. I thought it was just synced with the record. It's not. Like that. Let me, rather than having to play this, let me just cut to the chase. It's taking too much time. On this transcript, on this tape, fire rescue person says to you, I believe you agreed with me, set of prints behind the trailer. You were told there's...
Jackie's publishing again this transcript.
I'm not publishing, I'm asking. Did you...
I object.
I haven't heard a question yet.
I'd like to make one. Were you told by fire and rescue there's a set of prints behind the trailer?
Yes.
Okay. And did he tell you that they attempted to not disturb those footprints in any way?
I don't recall exactly what was said.
Let me further ask you, you asked Mr. Murdaugh, we heard this on the tape, you talked about the tire tracks coming and going, and he told you those weren't his tire tracks, correct?
He did say that they were not.
Okay. And further, he indicated to you, Mr. Murdaugh did, that he felt this was related to the boat case, and you indicated you knew about the boat case, you read about the boat case.
That's correct.
And in the boat case, Paul had been charged with 3 counts of felony DUI, killing a young girl and wounding 2 others, correct?
I don't know much details about that case. I really don't.
But Mr. Murdaugh indicated to you that the threats made against Paul.
He did.
And that he even got in a fight once about it.
I believe he said punched.
Punched, okay. And so on the scene, he believed that Paul's death was connected to someone angry about the boat case, correct?
Object to that, Your Honor, as to what he believed. Asking the witness what another person believed.
Object is overruled.
Thank you. On the scene, Mr. Murdaugh indicated to you he thought the death of his son was related to his son's involvement in the death of the young lady and the injury of 2 others in the boat case, correct?
It appeared that that's what he was getting at, yes.
That's on the tape. Now, let's talk a little bit about the preservation of the crime scene. What did you do other than put yellow tape up to preserve the crime scene?
That is about the extent of my job, is to put up the tape and make sure people that don't need to cross it don't cross it.
And I noticed that there were officers walking around putting little pieces of tape near shell casings.
There was one officer doing that, yes.
And in the process of doing that, I didn't see any lights other than maybe a flashlight. Were there any, did y'all put up any sort of high intensity lights so people could make sure they weren't stepping on something in the dark?
At that point, there was no light, no additional lighting that had been put up. No.
But you and your officers were walking through that entire area, is that correct?
We were walking in the area, yes.
Okay, and did you actually walk, I mean, the feed room, and let me, maybe this is the best way to do this.
Oh, pictures, please.
I'd like to use the Elmo. Photographs. I'm going to use the Elmo in just a moment to show this witness. I'm going to offer these into evidence without objection by the state, as I understand it.
Mr. Mark, I have no objection. I would note they're graphic and they need to be shielded from view.
Elmo ready?
They can be marked. What would the exhibit numbers be for the defense? Defense 1 and 2 are admitted without objection.
So, thank you. I'm going to first show you the picture. See if you can identify it, please.
That would be a picture of Paul.
And the second one, which would be exhibit number 2.
Picture of Maggie.
And when you say picture of Paul and picture of Maggie, these are crime scene photos, correct?
They appear to be, yes.
Is this what you saw that night?
Yes.
Both of these pictures?
Yes.
Accurately depict what you saw that night?
Yes.
So as you look at this, I want to make sure I understand. One of Paul's feet is still inside. This is the feed room behind him, correct?
Yes.
And this is his head, lots of blood, and this would be a part of his brain lying next to him, correct?
I don't know if that's part of his brain or not.
All right, so it's fair to say you didn't know whether that was part of his brain. When you first saw him, you didn't know whether his injuries were catastrophic and he was dead, or did you?
It was very clear that it was catastrophic.
Okay. That's great. Now, when you came upon the scene, clearly this feed room was part of the crime scene, correct?
Yes.
Now, you're taught to keep the crime scene pristine, correct?
As pristine as possible, yes.
There was no reason for you to go in there, was there?
Me at the time, no.
Okay. Was there any reason for the police, before the slave crime folks showed up, was there any reason for you all to go in there?
There was no reason for me to go in there. I cannot speak if there was a reason for another officer to have gone in there.
Well, let me ask you this. Did you all have any sort of crime scene expert with you that night, someone that processes crime scenes?
Investigators do process crime scenes.
Okay. Do you remember going in that meeting room?
I don't remember if I did specifically or
But
not.
you shouldn't have if you did, correct?
It's not to say that I shouldn't have. If there was something that needed to be done in there, then yes.
I guess what I'm getting at is, I think one of the, and you would agree with me, one of the cardinal rules of a crime scene is keep it pristine. Don't walk over things. Try to preserve tire tracks. Get pictures of them. Footprints. All those sorts of things. Was somebody with the officers with you? Were you in charge of the scene?
I was in charge of the deputies that were under my immediate supervision until someone higher than me had arrived on scene.
And were those deputies directed by you or anyone to do something to preserve the tire tracks? Pictures? Cordon them off? Cover them up?
I did not give anyone that instruction, no.
So you didn't do that. In terms of Paul, where Paul was laying, was anybody instructed, put a cordon around him? There's no reason to go into the feed room. There's no reason to do anything obtrusive until the SLED crime scene processes. They're on the way at this point, right?
I believe they were, yes.
And so if okay, so let's put the other one up. And identify this for me, please.
That's Maggie Murdaugh.
Your Honor, may we approach your group?
Stop looking.
And can you identify this for the jury, please?
That picture? Yeah. It's Maggie Murdaugh.
After she's been killed.
That's correct.
And by the way, when you saw her was it apparent that she was deceased? You believe? But have you ever seen a dead body before?
I have seen multiple, yes.
Many, right?
Yes.
So you're sort of an expert in this area, who's dead, who's not, who ought to get EMS there to check them out or not, correct? You make that call often?
Yes.
Okay. But you could understand, obviously, Alex Murdaugh's concern that they might be alive, that maybe, you're not saying that he shouldn't be concerned if somebody check out both Maggie and Paul to make sure they were dead, right?
He was very concerned about that, yes.
Okay. Now, as to Maggie Murdaugh, we see these numbers. Did y'all do these numbers, or were they done after y'all were there?
I don't know when those numbers were done. They were not placed by myself.
For your team?
I can't say that for sure, certain.
We see that in the video that they're putting down yellow tape. They're not putting these down, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you also, according to the video we saw, a number of your officers are walking around marking where cartridges are, right?
They were.
Did they pick any of them up?
No, not to my knowledge.
Well, later on, we see them talking to you and others on the video where they're saying these rounds came from a blackout. They were blackout rounds. For blackout?
300 blackout, yes, sir.
Right. Did they get down on their hands and knees and look, or, did they?
You would have to ask them. I don't know what they did to know that they were 300 blackout rounds.
Well, who were those officers that were walking around her without a light on, perhaps stepping on evidence, correct? Who were those officers?
Deputy McDowell and Deputy Pruitt were both in that area.
Were they doing that pursuant to your instruction?
They were not specifically instructed to do it. They just took the initiative to do it.
Okay, I don't know. I want to play. You ready? Do I have to turn down the law?
Yeah, we're good.
Yes, over there. Actually, all over.
Okay, so this is, your officer is putting a sheet on Paul's body?
Not putting a sheet on, the sheet was already there.
Already there, okay, continue, please.
Fire rescue might have some more sheets we can steal.
That's why it shouldn't be all four.
There's more.
Who's that standing inside the feed room?
Just inside that doorway was
Yeah.
Deputy McDowell.
Okay, were you the present, oh, is that your body cams, you're watching him do it, right?
That's correct.
Should he have done that?
Stand where he's standing.
Standing inside the feed room?
It's part of the crime scene. We're all standing inside the crime scene.
Inside what?
The crime scene, we are all standing in the same crime scene.
I understand the same crime scene, but clearly you believe, based on discussion, and everyone in your unit believed, that the fatal shot was made where he's basically standing, correct? That, in that area?
Where we are all standing.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Is that procedure to walk around on top of an area where shots have been fired? Perhaps, and I think even in this, they're talking about tissue or brain matter laying there. I mean, aren't you supposed to, you don't put anything on your feet?
Is there a question? There's not a question in that statement. Mr. Stain, you must pose questions.
Did you in any way have your men or women put protective gear on their feet? I saw you put gloves on, but did they put anything to insulate themselves from contaminating the scene?
On their feet, no.
In many instances, departments around the country have people dressed in a gown to keep their DNA, their hair, from contaminating the scene. Did you do that?
We do not on road patrol with Gallatin County as standard practice, no.
You do not do that?
Not a standard practice, no.
Have you ever done that?
I have not.
Have you ever had something covering your feet when you're walking on a crime scene?
I couldn't tell you that for sure.
Now, if we later on find, and did you notice bloody footprints? Well, first of all, did you notice bloody footprints inside the feed room?
I don't remember seeing any.
Sorry?
I don't remember seeing any bloody footprints.
Okay. If there were bloody footprints in the feed room, could they have been created by you or your men?
They could have been created by anyone walking in that area, sure.
And you're walking in there, or your men are walking in there, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And you think that's standard operating procedure?
Well, you do your best not to contaminate anything.
And this is your best?
What you're looking at right now is standard procedure.
To walk in an area where there's blood, where there's brain matter, where there's, and I believe there's wadding laying on the floor.
I don't recall.
But you would agree with me that you have these procedures so that you don't contaminate the crime scene, so that you don't destroy evidence like those tire tracks, or those footprints, or leave your DNA, or in some way alter the scene so that if, I mean, you would agree with me, so that, let me finish the question, so that if there is exculpatory or inculpatory evidence that would help you find the perpetrator and prosecute him, or evidence that would clear somebody, that was destroyed. Some of that was destroyed that night because you, your department, and maybe even SWAT, didn't preserve that evidence. Isn't that correct?
I'm not sure if I fully understand your question.
The question is this: if you are exploiting your standing, your men are standing in the spot, and there was evidence there, or the tire tracks that weren't preserved, or the footprints that weren't preserved, that evidence could either incriminate somebody or exculpate somebody. Could, correct?
Could, yes.
That's why you don't do this, right?
That's why you don't contaminate the evidence, correct? We put it around the whole area.
Did you put it so that folks couldn't drive in and out?
They were not to go past where my vehicle was parked. I believe that was the extent of the yellow tape.
Yeah, but between your vehicle and the entrance, there was none of those tire tracks were preserved.
Entrance of,
The property. That if somebody had driven into the property,
you mean from the main road of Moselle
from
Road?
the main road,
All the vehicles were coming in on that driveway.
right. So if somebody had come in and left, who committed the murders, whatever tire tracks that were left were obliterated by your men. Is that right?
It's possible.
Were you there when the coroner arrived?
Given my extent of the time there, I would assume so, but I don't remember
But you don't remember
specifically.
seeing the coroner?
I may have. I don't remember specifically.
Apparently, according to the body cam, you didn't talk to him.
Not on my body camera, but it could have been after the body camera was turned off. I don't know.
And why'd you turn it off?
Why was the body camera turned off?
Yes.
Once my specific job of doing any primary investigation after my initial arrival is completed and I'm not going to be doing anything further to investigate, it's no longer needed.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. You were asked a series of questions about contaminating evidence. Are you aware that any evidence was contaminated in this case?
I'm not.
Did you engage in everything you could to avoid contaminating evidence?
Yes.
Did you in fact instruct your deputies set up a crime scene and instruct them to avoid areas where evidence might be contaminated?
We did everything we possibly could to avoid contaminating.
Do your officers all have basic training in trying to avoid contamination of evidence?
Yes.
Are you also, though, as first responders in a fluid situation, doing the best you can to assess what's going on?
Correct.
It's not your job to do the actual crime scene investigation work, is that correct?
Not at all.
You were asked about whether or not you had any meetings with prosecutors. Is it common for law enforcement witnesses or any witnesses to meet with the prosecutors prior to a trial?
Very common.
Okay. Did anybody ask you to do anything but express your accurate and honest opinions and observations about what you observed at this scene?
No.
You were asked about this particular shotgun right here, this 12-gauge shotgun. This is the shotgun that Alex Murdaugh had when you arrived at the scene. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you were asked about the shells right here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you unload this weapon?
I did.
Was it unloaded by somebody else after you turned it over to them?
Yes.
You were asked a little bit about the 300 blackout casings or cases that were at the scene. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And just real quick, explain to the jury what a casing or a case is, please.
So a casing would be what would be left after the projectile has been fired through a weapon.
After it had been fired, the shell that comes out of the gun and lands on the ground near the victim. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's the remnants of a fired round. Is that right?
That's correct.
There were multiple ones of those blackouts surrounding Maggie. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You were asked a lot about the tire tracks, and you just happened to notice those over behind the defendant's vehicle. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we had a still image put into evidence, exhibit number 5. This is it right here, which is the still image. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. And the still image doesn't reflect as good as what the video does. Is that right? You can see it
The video shows it much better.
Much better. All right. Were these like tracks in the dirt, or were these just impressions in the grass, in the dewy grass?
They appear to be impressions on the dewy grass.
They weren't like tracks in the dirt that you saw, correct?
No.
All right. I'm going to go back to the video. I'm playing it at approximately 25 minutes and 11 seconds.
See? From earlier, but only 2 were mine.
Did you go out this way at all?
No.
So it's right.
Bring me back.
Just go over to that corner of the building.
I'm almost to you. Let me see what we have first, whether or not handle that part or not?
I see quite a few tire tracks in here. Were any of these you going in and out?
No, I came in here and I left one time and I came back.
Okay.
The rest of them, maybe
Okay.
from earlier, but
Okay.
only 2 are mine.
Did you go out this way?
So the images that we just saw, those were the dewy impressions in the grass that you were just talking about, is that correct?
That's correct.
And the defendant said 2 of them were mine, and the rest of them may have been from earlier, is that correct?
Yes.
You were asked a little bit about the boat case. Did you have any detailed knowledge or understanding of the boat case when you arrived at the scene?
No.
You just knew very generally that there was some boat case, is that right?
Yes, it had been in the news.
Did you even realize that this was that Paul Murdaugh when you arrived on the scene?
Not until he had brought up the boat incident.
And who brought up the boat incident?
Mr. Murdaugh did.
And within a few minutes of you arriving, he's the one that brought up the boat incident, is
He
that
did.
correct? And he offered that right out of the gate as a possible explanation for what happened here, is that right?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything further?
Your Honor. Did you find it unreasonable for him to say that his son, who'd been involved in this incident, who'd been threatened on numerous occasions, been punched, he told you he'd been punched, right?
He did.
Okay. That was a possible explanation, not implausible, for somebody killing Paul. You didn't bite back on him, did you?
No.
And it was, in his mind, apparently the only reasonable explanation that occurred, right?
I don't know what was in his
Well, I
mind.
mean, that's what he told you. That's what he believed.
That was the statement that he made, yes.
Okay. And just one other follow-up question. You were asked if there was any evidence, the dewy tire tracks. This was at 10 o'clock at night. Was there dew on the ground already?
It was pretty humid out. There was a lot of
It was
dew.
humid.
Yeah.
It wasn't in the morning.
This was not morning time.
So, and are you telling me no one could have looked, no expert could have looked and said, you know, that's a Suburban, that's a pickup truck, no one could do that? Or do
I'm
you-
not going to pretend to know what an expert in that kind of stuff can and can't do.
But you're not an expert. Did you believe those tire tracks would last until SLED got there?
Yes, it appeared that they probably would.
Did you point them out to SLED?
Did I do what?
Did you point them out to SLED?
I did not.
You may step down. Call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Corporal McDowell.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give to the court in this trial shall be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. If you'll have a seat and adjust that microphone, make sure you speak into that microphone. State your name and spell your last name, please.
My name is Chad McDowell. The last name is spelled M-C-D-O-W-E-L-L.
Corporal McDowell, how you doing today?
Good.
Tell the jury where you work, please.
I work for College County Sheriff's Office. I'm assigned to road patrol as a canine handler.
Okay, and can you just give us a quick background of who you are, where you grew up, and how you ended up in your career in law enforcement?
Sure. I grew up in Colleton County, went to Colleton County High School, went to college at Tri-County Technical College, where I studied criminal justice. Once I reached age, I came home, was hired by Colleton County Sheriff's Office, left for a couple of years to go work for Jasper County, and then came back to Colleton. I've been assigned to road patrol at Colleton.
All right, and what year did you first start working for Colleton County Sheriff's Department, or began your law enforcement career?
2016.
And what's your current, you said you're a corporal now, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what is your current assignment? What are your duties?
I'm still assigned to road patrol. I'm a canine handler.
All right, you say canine. Explain to the jury what that is.
So I have a canine that is assigned to me. We respond to certain calls, or if we're requested by another deputy for narcotics searches for suspects, things of that matter.
All right, and canine is a dog, correct?
That's correct.
All right, what's your dog's name?
Eva.
Eva? What kind of dog is Eva?
He's a Belgian Malinois.
Malinois?
Yep.
Is that kind of like a German Shepherd?
Kind of short hair, pointy ears.
I got you. Short hair, pointy ears. Is Evo typically with you when you're out on patrol?
Yes, sir.
Was Evo with you the night of June 7th, 2021?
Yes, sir.
Were you a corporal then at that time?
No, sir. I was a deputy.
All right. And who was on the squad that you were on?
Sergeant Daniel Green, Corporal Elise Janicki, myself, and Deputy Cody Pruitt.
And so who was your immediate supervisor?
It would have been Corporal Janicki.
Okay. And then above that is?
Sergeant Green.
All right. And then above that?
Lieutenant Nettles.
All right. And then above that?
Captain Krause.
Okay. What shift were you working the night of June 7th, 2021?
Yes, sir, I was.
And that was in Colleton County?
Yes, sir.
And what shift were you working that night?
Night shift.
Did you ultimately respond to a call for service at 4147 Moselle Road?
Yes, sir.
And you actually went there?
I did.
And did you come to the incident location at the kennels at that property at 4147 Moselle Road?
I did.
Is that in Colleton County?
It is.
Were you, when you arrived, what other first responders were on scene to your recollection?
Sergeant Green was there. There was one other fire rescue personnel vehicle in there. I believe the rest were staged, best I can remember. When I say staged, I mean at the head of the driveway. There may have been a couple of other apparatuses on scene.
And do you recall which driveway you entered? Did you enter the driveway near the kennels? Where you came upon the
Yes,
kennels?
sir. It was same driveway everyone else entered.
So you were parked behind
Sergeant Green.
Green's?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What did you do after that? After you got out of your vehicle, what did you do?
I approached the crime scene. I was trying to make my way to Sergeant Green to see what he needed me to do. I made my way through the crime scene as carefully as I could. I approached Sergeant Green, saw that he was interviewing the only person on scene, so I went back to my vehicle.
Okay. And did you see who he was interviewing?
Mr. Murdaugh, yes, sir.
Do you see him in the courtroom here today?
Yes, sir.
Can you point him out?
Yes, sir. He's in the middle, navy blue suit.
Can the record reflect he's identified the defendant? It does. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 6 to your testimony.
No objection.
And this is a disc, but I want you to take a look at it and see if you recognize this disc.
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, and what is on this disc?
It'd be body cam footage from my body cam that I wore.
All right, and how do you know that this is that body cam footage?
It has my initials on it.
All right, so you reviewed this and put your initials on it, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. If I could get input, please. Let me ask you this. When you got this call for service, were you currently on another call for service, or are you just out on patrol?
No, sir, I was just out on patrol.
Once you got that call for service, what did you do? Did you activate your lights and sirens?
Activated lights and sirens and responded to the incident location.
And once you do that, do you make all haste to get to that incident location as fast, but it also as reasonably safe as you can?
Yes, sir.
Is that standard operating procedure?
Yes, sir.
first 10 minutes, sorry. The first 10 minutes of this body cam are essentially you driving to the scene, is that correct, roughly?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to fast forward to closer in time when you arrive. I heard proceed to the route. What was that?
I had a GPS activated on my phone.
Just like most people use, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Take a slight left turn. In a quarter mile, arrive at 4147 Moselle Road.
75 days on sale, Moselle.
Are these the kennels that you saw when you arrived at the property?
Yes, sir.
And to the right is sort of the shed or the hangar, is that correct?
That's correct.
Let me ask you this. You're obviously serving as a road patrol officer, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Do you, what is your job as a road patrol officer, as a first responder, when you come upon a scene like this? What is your particular role as you arrive at something like this?
We go on scene, we secure the scene, meaning make sure there's no active threat for other arriving first responders. We'll preserve the scene to the best of our ability and then turn the scene over to arriving detectives.
When you arrive at a scene like this, are you constantly not only paying attention for any threat or anything like that, but also making sure that you don't disturb or any sort of evidence that may be at the scene?
Yes, sir.
Is that part of your general training and standard operating procedure?
It is.
You also have to couple that, though, with the duties of a first responder, which is to get to that scene, to secure it, make sure there's no active threats, and get it under control. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the duties of a first responder have both of those sort of balancing together. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Or are you constantly always looking around for evidence, not only to identify it, but also to assure that you don't disturb anything? Is that your general?
Judge, Your Honor, leading.
Thank you, Your Honor. What is your general training as a road officer as it relates to coming upon a scene and looking for evidence?
Our number one duty would be safety. Number two, we're looking for evidence so as not to disturb it.
Thank you. Right there to the right, what is that to the right of the screen?
It'd be Miss Murdaugh's body.
Murdaugh.
Who are those individuals right there?
Sergeant Green and Mr. Murdaugh.
How you doing?
What did the defendant say to you right there?
He said, "How are you doing?"
Did you know him?
No, sir.
How you doing? That's what he said?
Yes, sir.
What's her birthday?
I'm okay.
9/15/68.
Okay, and what's your son's first name? You said Paul?
Paul Terry Murdaugh.
What's his birthday?
4. What are they covering him up?
Tell them they don't have to do that. They don't need to.
Hey, he's asked that if we don't have to disturb anything, not to. We've got a sled on the way. Yep.
All right, what were you asking fire and rescue to do at that point?
Just to try to preserve it the best they could. If they didn't
But what were you specifically asking them not to do?
cover the bodies if they didn't have to.
And what was their response, though?
I couldn't make it out. I believe he said we're covering them for family responding. I couldn't make it out. He's asked that if we don't have to disturb anything, not to. We've got the sled on the way.
So we just gonna cover them up since the family is here.
Yep.
And that's it.
Do you recall now?
Again, it sounds like he says we're going to cover him up because of the family being here.
Does the family being here?
That's what it sounds like.
All right.
Right through here, we'll round this way here. So this is strong enough.
Yes, I agree.
I told everybody else to cancel, so won't really else come down here.
Thank you. Hey, Cody, I need a piece of that tape whenever you get done.
What did you just ask Cody for?
A piece of tape, piece of crime scene tape.
All right, and who was Cody?
Deputy Pruitt, he's the one that you can see there with the yellow crime scene tape.
And why did you ask Deputy Pruitt for some crime scene tape?
I had observed a shell casing on the ground. I wanted to mark it so that it didn't become disturbed.
Your general duties as an officer, you observed something and you asked for some tape to mark it, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's what you were previously describing your role is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah. If y'all don't mind, just mark them. Do what? Okay. I got a casing right here, so watch your step.
That casing that you saw, did you recognize what kind of ammunition it was?
Yes, sir.
What kind of ammunition was it?
300 blackout casing.
And how could you tell it was a 300 blackout casing?
Just my own personal experience. I own a 300 blackout, and I recognized it.
You recognize the case from your own experience?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Blackout.
Did you observe any dogs in the kennels?
I did.
Do you remember how many or where they were?
I do not remember.
More than one dog, though?
I don't remember. They said they had several casings by her body, but this one will be a little bit harder to find later, so I want to mark it real fast.
When you marked that casing, were you careful not to disturb its location where you found it?
Yes, sir. I placed the tape beside it and then placed a rock on top so that it wouldn't blow away. Why are there so many shell casings and only one?
Sorry to do that to everyone. Well, what was that loud noise?
It's just my windshield wipers.
And why was it making that noise?
They had removed all the moisture, I guess. I don't see anybody.
all the way down here. You ain't come through for a call. Can I see a couple more pieces? I found some more, but. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out why there's 300 blackout. Trying to figure out why there's so many shell casings, but only one gunshot went to the back of each head. Not my job to figure that out, I'm just curious. I only saw one more casing, but just in case I see more. Daniel put his car in there. So, no. This is, I'll tell you about this in a minute. There's one there. There's blood over here. You looking at shell casings? 300 blackout. Sheriff?
Those cases that you were marking right there, did you at all disturb the location where you saw them?
No, sir.
Is it your job to be doing a crime scene collection for this case, or are you just doing that to assist those who will do that will arrive at a later time?
No, sir. I don't collect anything. I'm just marking it so that they're not disturbed.
Probably. Yeah, those will be easy to find. I was just marking a couple that were in the gravel. It might be harder to see at some point. Y'all familiar with this family?
I wasn't until you told me.
I'll fill you in later. I don't think there's going to be anything for me and anybody to do here.
What did you just say right there?
I don't think there's going to be anything for me and Evo to do here.
All right, what did you mean by that?
There was no article search that needed to be conducted right then and there. Putting Evo on the ground could have caused more of a disturbance than just leaving him up.
Because that's a...
You said for Evo to do?
Yeah, for me and Evo. Please watch your board.
Hey, watch this go. Huh? The gentleman in the white shirt is the husband of the that is Paul Murdaugh. This is his mother. Paul Murdaugh is the guy who voted against him. Yeah.
It's going to be retaliation from family.
He did have a firearm whenever I pulled up. It's a shotgun.
All right. I'm going to now show you a portion of what's been previously admitted to evidence as Exhibit 1. For the record, I'm starting at 4227. Who's that to the right of the screen right there?
That would be me.
All right, and what are you about to do?
Step inside and assist CID with lifting that sheet.
All right, and were you asked to do that?
Yes, sir.
And who asked you to do that?
Captain Chapman.
All right, and where's Captain Chapman in this image?
In the middle
And is he a senior officer to you?
at that time.
Okay. And I noticed before you moved, what did you do?
Turned my light on
And why did you turn on your light?
so that I could plainly see what was underneath me where I was going.
Did you disturb any evidence or anything as you started to go into the feed room?
No, sir.
Were you careful to avoid doing that?
Yes, sir.
Did you kick any shell casings or waddings or anything like that when you went into the feed room?
No, sir.
Did you step on any bloody footprints when you went into the feed room?
No, sir.
If you had seen something like that before you stepped in there, what would you have done?
I would have stopped and notified the detective.
Fire rescue might have some more sheets, but still.
Do you recall what, if anything, was laying on Paul's rear end?
His cell phone, or a cell phone.
Is that it in this image right here?
Yes, sir.
I haven't asked Dad about the phone, but Dad did say he came over and checked the pulses. Beyond that, I don't know what else he can do. He did have a shotgun with him. I haven't secured that immediately.
Did you kind of jump out of the feed room just then?
Yes, sir.
Did you turn on your light before you did so?
I believe so.
Watch it again. Did you jump out when you left the feed room?
Yes, sir.
And why'd you jump out like that?
Try not to disturb the body. It was easier to leap out than to try to step.
Did you enter the feed room at any point after that, to your recollection?
Not to my recollection.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit Number 1 and see if you recognize this particular image.
Yes, sir.
I'll switch inputs, please. Does that appear to, is that how you found Paul when you arrived at the scene?
Yes, sir.
Were his hands underneath him in that fashion when you arrived at the scene?
Yes, sir.
All right. Have State's Exhibit 7, I believe without objection. Without alternate evidence. Without objection. I'll show you what's been marked as Exhibit 7, and see if you recognize that image.
Yes, sir.
And what is that?
It's a still image of video of my body-worn camera.
Is that a still image of when the defendant said, "How you doing?" and walked up?
Yes, sir.
Court's indulgence. Come on, Your Honor. Nothing further from this witness at this time, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Please report, Your Honor. So, when you got to the scene, who was your supervisor?
Can you repeat that question? I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. But that's okay. I'll speak a little bit louder. When you got to the scene, who was your supervisor?
Sergeant Green.
Sergeant Green. And I believe Sergeant Green was instructing you all to put some yellow tape up. You did some of that?
No, sir.
You didn't do that?
Deputy Pruitt, yes, but I didn't.
What was Sergeant Green, what was his instructions to you? What were you there to do? Number one, let me withdraw that question. Were you there to apprehend somebody?
Not at the time, no, sir. I was just there to assist where needed.
Assist doing what?
Whatever was needed of me.
Were you all attempting to determine what happened?
We there as initial responders were there to secure the scene.
Okay, secure the scene. And secure the scene for further processing by SLED?
By our investigators, I learned later on that SLED was responding as well.
So let me, by way of example, you went down to where Paul's body was. It was covered with a sheet. You see that on the video, correct?
Not when I initially responded, but yes, sir.
No, but the video we just saw.
Yes, sir.
And why were you all, what was there a purpose of going down there and pulling the sheet back, looking around it?
I believe they were looking for another weapon.
What kind of weapon?
I believe they were looking for a 300 blackout.
But, we saw in the picture, if you look at Paul's body, there's no 300 blackout laying next to him, correct?
No, sir.
I'm correct.
Yes, you are correct. No, there was no 300 blackout laying beside him.
Okay, so you say you're down there looking for another weapon. Where were you looking for another weapon?
I wasn't, sir. I was assisting lifting the sheet for detectives.
And you concede you stepped into the feed room.
Yes, sir.
And based on the way Paul was laying, and of course you did have a flashlight, you were looking, trying not to step on anything. Did you have anything to insulate your feet? In some jurisdictions, they have little baggy things to put over their feet to make sure they don't contaminate the scene. Did you have those on?
No, sir.
And did you, when you stepped in, you got a flashlight, what you were looking at with the visible eye, you're determining you weren't disturbing the scene, correct?
That's correct.
You made an effort not to.
Yes, sir.
You don't know whether you did or you didn't.
To my knowledge, I did not.
But you can't say that you didn't. To your knowledge.
Can you repeat that?
To your knowledge, you didn't.
To my knowledge, I did not disturb anything.
Okay. But you would concede there's microscopic evidence sometimes of crime scenes, correct?
Yes, sir, that's possible.
And you didn't have a microscope?
No, sir.
But like the SLED crime team would look very closely, would they not? They would not, as far as I could tell, you were looking basically 3 or 4 feet away from the floor, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what you can see with the naked eye at night with a flashlight from 3 or 4 feet is what you base your opinion you didn't disturb anything.
That's correct.
Now, and you don't know why they were looking for another weapon, but you don't know what other weapon, you don't know where that weapon might have been. And again, multiple deputies had seen Paul's body before He was covered with a sheet, right?
Myself, Sergeant Green did.
Okay. Were y'all, in your presence, any of the other officers with you there that night, did any of them discuss this as a possible murder-suicide?
It's possible. It's not to my recollection.
Okay. Now, when you were going out and we saw you mark a shell casing, was that in the grass or on the dirt road?
I believe the first one was in gravel.
In the gravel, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Okay, but you found others, right?
Yes, sir.
And to do that, you had to walk around in the grass?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, you've got a flashlight, you're looking, and you don't know what was in the grass that you may have disturbed around those shell casings?
No, sir.
You don't know?
No, sir.
You may have disturbed something.
It's possible.
And I guess what I'm trying to ask is, why then were you trying to look for shell casings? Why couldn't you wait till the next morning? Why was this urgency? I mean, was somebody getting away, or, I mean, I don't quite understand why.
I can't answer that. I don't know. I didn't know if somebody was getting away or not.
Did somebody instruct you to go find shell casings?
No, sir.
You just did it on your own initiative?
Yes, sir.
And you concede that you may have disturbed or destroyed evidence in that process?
Microscopic or something I didn't see.
Well, microscopic, something down in the grass. I mean, you're walking on grass, right? Not
Yes, sir.
a smooth surface like in the shed, in the feed room, but it's grass at night, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I guess what I'm trying to wonder is what y'all were doing. Were you trying to solve a crime? Were you trying to just index everything was there? And when did you find out sled was coming?
So we're trying to mark everything there. As you can tell, there were multiple units going back and forth, fire rescue as well as sheriff's office. We try to mark it so that it brings awareness to them and it doesn't become disturbed.
I'm sorry, I can't understand you. I can't hear you.
There were multiple units on scene,
Right.
sheriff's office as well as fire rescue.
Right.
The reason that I saw urgency to mark those shell casings is so that it brings awareness to those of us that were walking around and they don't become disturbed.
Well, that brings up the question, should you have been walking around? What if you got two dead people, whoever the perpetrator was, at that point y'all hadn't identified, had you?
No, sir.
Okay, so the perpetrator may be in the woods across the street as far as you know at that point, right?
Could have been anywhere.
Right. So you're not trying to solve a crime, you're processing a scene?
I'm not processing anything.
You don't know what you're doing.
I just told you what I was doing, sir.
You're marking pieces of evidence.
Yes, sir.
And the urgency to do that was so that no one else would walk over them
Yes, sir.
while you're walking around them.
Around. Yes, sir.
Well, you don't know whether you actually stepped on one or not, do you?
I was very careful not to.
Now, let me also ask you this, that the pattern of the first shell casing was how far away from the feed room?
I can't say.
That you found?
The first shell casing I found?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
10 feet, 20 feet, more than me, or further than?
Probably about the same distance from me to you.
Okay. From the feed room door?
Yes, sir.
Now, I understand, and you got a blackout, right?
Yes, sir.
And when you fire that, does it eject to the right or the left?
To the right. Mine does.
Okay. So if the feed room is where I am, that shell casing ejected to the right and forward, right and back? What do you know?
Are you asking where the shell casing was in relation to the door? It would have been forward and right of the door.
Forward and right of the door. And there was the pattern of casings leading, do they all lead to her body?
I can't remember.
Did you sketch where you found it?
No, sir. I did not do a crime scene sketch.
Have you ever done a crime scene sketch?
No, sir.
Tell me your training in crime scene processing.
It's very basic, limited what you would get at the Criminal Justice Academy.
Very basic.
Yes, sir.
So you're not a crime scene processor. again, and I'm not asking this question repetitively, I'm just trying to puzzle it out. What, you don't know what your role was there?
I was a first responder.
Well, they were dead, Paul and Maggie, right? You couldn't render them any aid.
Your Honor, I would object. No question in that statement.
Is there a question?
Could you have rendered them aid? Were they in a physical condition where your assistance would have helped?
No, sir.
They were dead, correct?
Are you asking? Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay, let me show you a couple of these clips and ask about them here, and I've got times. You don't have to go through the... Okay, would you go to 1040? How does that read? I don't know. Okay, this is you walking, and these are the dog pens over here to the left, correct?
Yes, sir.
And right in front of that, one of the dog pens is a hose that is neatly coiled around a hose, something holding the hose, right?
That's what it looks like.
Okay, go ahead. How about go to 11:12?
How you doing? What's up?
Okay, now, this, Mr. Waters asked you about this just a moment ago when he said, how you doing when somebody walked up. You would concede to me that but for that one quip, he appears to be distraught over the death of his wife and son?
He appeared visibly upset.
Yes, okay, other than this, how you doing sort of thing, right?
Correct.
Okay, also, we've seen him in a t-shirt and a pair of shorts, correct?
Yes, sir.
I've looked at your report, I looked at everybody that encountered him that night. No report indicates any blood visible on him. You would agree with that?
I didn't observe any.
What?
I did not observe any.
Okay. It's a white shirt.
Yes, sir.
If you noted blood on him, you would have put that in your notes or reported that to somebody, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How about, let me see, 1845.
Three-inner blackout. Three-inner blood.
Stop 1 second. That's you apparently determining the shell casing you found is a 300 blackout, correct?
The one that I marked, yes, sir.
The one that was in the gravel.
Yes, sir.
That's all we did, okay. Just a couple final questions. Since right, I have no further questions.
Remember,
Very briefly, Your Honor. Are you a first responder?
Yes, sir.
Your first job is safety, correct?
Yes, sir.
Second job is to protect the scene, is that correct?
Objection, leading.
Okay. Tell me what your job is as a first responder are again, please.
Yes, sir. We secure the scene, make sure there's no current threat for additional first responders. We then secure the scene, make sure that nobody comes in that's not supposed to, so that we preserve any evidence that's there.
As part of your training to avoid disturbing the scene as best you can.
Yes, sir.
Still paying attention to your primary role.
Yes, sir.
As part of your training and your experience and what you try to do is if you do see evidence.
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
I'll rephrase, Your Honor. If you are on scene and you do see evidence while you were there, what is your standard operating procedure in that event?
I would mark it
And why do you do that?
just to bring awareness to it so that it's not disturbed.
Is your job to be a crime scene investigator?
No, sir.
You're just marking that? I'll rephrase. You were asked earlier about apprehending any suspects. Was Mr. Murdaugh ever in custody?
No, sir, not to my recollection.
To your observation, was he allowed to move freely?
Yes, sir.
Was he allowed to interact with people who came to talk to him?
Yes, sir.
Was he ever placed in the back of a police car?
Not that I'm aware of.
Never put in handcuffs?
No, sir.
Was he being treated as a suspect when you were there?
Not that I'm aware of.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down. Put the lights back up. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll break for lunch. We will resume at 2:15. Please do not discuss the case. In recess till 2:15.